This is a quick tutorial video to show you how to add the illusion of motion onto a picture. So we're going to work with this picture of the black Camry, which is just sitting there in the middle of the road doing nothing, and we're going to change it to a picture that looks like it's actually moving along. And we're going to do that by adding a blur to it of a particular type that actually gives it that impression of movement. Now, the blur won't be as clear in the video because of the video compression, which is taking away some of the detail, like in this road here. First thing I suggest you do is when you're setting up any image is that you turn on the history panel in your Photoshop, just so that you can see what you've done and easily go back. So say I chose a couple of tools and did some very random changes to this picture. You can have a look and see how I can go backwards and forwards at speed between any of these changes. So if you're trying to work out how much difference a change made, or if you really wanted to do something, it is very easy to do that. The other thing to remember, if you're using the keyboard shortcuts, to be able to move backwards more than one space, Control Z, which you may be used to in Word, will only go back potentially one space. Control Alt Z can go back as many steps as you need. So Control Alt Z to step backwards. You can also see that by going into the Edit menu, and you can see that you've got your different options in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by duplicating our layer. I do that by clicking on the background over on the right hand side, and then I'm going to use Control J. That makes a new layer that it is an exact copy of the first one. If you like, you can always use the menus if you can't remember your Control J, so it's under the layer menu, new, and layer via copy. Okay, so with this particular menu which we have, the first thing I'm going to do is to change the name on the layer to reflect what it is. It's always good practice to rename your layers. So I'm going to call this particular layer Car. Okay, then I want to turn it into a smart layer. It means that some of the tools that we use become much easier to use. So to do that, I right-hand click on the layer, and I know that it's clicked off in the video, but the option that I'm choosing here is Convert to Smart Object. Fifth one down in Photoshop CS6 by default. So once it's a smart object, you can see a little icon in the corner of it. And you can see Convert to Smart Object is what we've done. You can see that in the history, the different things that we've done. So now that it's a smart layer, what I want to do is add a filter to it. So I'm going to go to the Filter menu, and I'm going to be adding a blur, and in specific I'm adding a radial blur. So some of the default settings on this are okay. So amount of 10, zoom, and best. And this blur center, you can see there's a little dot which is more prominent than the others. If I move that around, you can see that we're starting to get little lines radiating out from it, and that's the effect that a radial blur gives you. It blurs starting from a center point, and it's like you have wind blowing over dust from there, like with a leaf blower. So I'm going to put my center point up towards the top left, which on my car means that it's going to look like from about here is where my motion is coming from. So when I go OK, that will apply and you'll be able to see the blur. Now remember, I said that it's not going to look as good in this video as what it'll look on your screen. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to take away some of the blur because we don't really want the car being blurred. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my paintbrush tool, which is over here, and I'm going to use the black and the white. So here I was using red before. If I click on these two little black and white boxes, it'll reset it to black and white. Now, using these tools, if you use black, you will hide the radial blur or any effect that you've been using in a smart filter. If you use white, it will put it back. Now, you can see at the moment I can't use any tool. I've got the arrow mouse cursor. because I need to go and click on my white smart filter over here. Now I have an actual cursor, which is the size of my paintbrush. If you're not using a round paintbrush, go up to the paintbrushes, choose one that's in the very top line that has a bit of blur on the outsides, and put it to about somewhere between 150 and 250 pixels. The smaller it is, just the more work you have to do with the mouse. So now that I have my paintbrush set up, I'm just going to paint over the car. Now, I'm painting with black, and black will hide the effect being that blur. So if I paint relatively carefully over the car, I'm going to take away all the blur from the car. Now, the wing mirrors and the top edges I couldn't get to very well, so I'm going to actually make the size of my paintbrush smaller. You can't see this necessarily in the video either, but it's now smaller to fit the size of the wing mirrors, and I just made those wing mirrors so they are now not blurred. So you can make your brush smaller and finesse around the edges just to take off blur where you don't want it. But now you have a car that looks a bit like it's moving.